When we're talking about counting, we're talking about those earliest ideas of understanding of number. So we're not yet talking about adding or subtracting or things like that. We're talking about, what is 5, what is 2, what is 12, how are those numbers related to one another at a sort of preschool and early elementary level. For the sake of this discussion, when we're talking about counting principles, we're talking about learning how to count to 5 and learning what 5 means and those kinds of things.
It's not just this thing that students do or young children do when they're sort of saying words out loud that they can mimic someone knowing a counting sequence. It encompasses much more than that. So just a pure definition of counting is sort of maybe 5 modules long, you might say. And I think for us it began as part of a sort of side project from something we were working on. We had begun thinking about how youngest students in kindergarten and pre-kindergarten began to learn mathematics, and one of the things that we became fascinated in looking at was counting, and quite frankly, we weren't that fascinated originally. I mean, you might say we were dreading it in a sense of thinking about how do we engage in this idea, because it just seemed so trivial to us. And now I think we've learned how naive we were in sort of thinking about how non-trivial it is that as kids learn to count.
And as we learned about the framework for research around counting, we just saw more and more clearly how it's really useful for making sense of what kids are doing. It makes what kids are doing really predictable, and perhaps even more important, it provides us a vernacular and a way to talk with one another about what we're seeing kids do, and what we might do with them next as their teacher or as their parent, for that matter.
In the next 5 videos, we're going to discuss 5 principles of counting. The names of those principles are standard order, one-to-one, cardinal, conservation of cardinality, and successor.
Kindergarten teachers in particular, kindergarten mathematics teachers for that matter, don't have a lot of people in professional development talking about their work. And so the first thing that we'd find is as we began to talk about counting, they sort of sat up a little straighter and they got excited that someone was willing to talk to them and engage with them about something that they knew already was very complex and very exciting to watch kids go through. So we saw them get excited as we began to engage in a conversation that they were a part of. And then as we then went into some of these frameworks and talked about these counting principles, they sort of would like start nodding because they were like, yeah, my kids do that. I know that thing. And as Rob mentioned, now we have a name for it. Now I know what to call that when I'm talking to the teacher next door about, are your kids at this place? They have this word to describe that, as opposed to this sort of long drawn out conversation about that thing.
But my goal is that all of us in psychology and mathematics, in classroom teaching and math education research and so on, that we'll all understand and use these words to have efficient and precise conversations with one another about teaching and learning of counting.